To watch these important lessons, subscribe to DP Education's YouTube channel right now. Click on the bell icon to stay updated on the latest lessons. Sri Lanka's largest free online school, DP Education.
So my dear children, in the earlier chapters, we discussed several things regarding the biosphere lesson. Over there, we discussed about the mechanisms which helps to keep the equilibrium in an ecosystem. Then we discussed about the population curves. Then my dear children, we discussed about the environment pollution and the types of pollutants that we can observe within the environment pollution, right? So over there, we discussed about several materials that helps for the environment pollution. Right. Then my dear children, this is the next type of matter which helps in environment pollution. And you know that in previous chapters we discussed about several particles, right? Several particles, several kinds of substances that helps in environment pollution. So within here you are given with a topic about the particulate matter. So here we are discussing about some kinds of particles. Different kinds of particles that helps in environment pollution. In the recent chapters also we discussed about the substances and particles, my dear children, but here especially they have mentioned about the several particles that mainly promoting the process of environment pollution. So we'll head on to see what are the particles, right, that we can observe within the environment that helps for the pollution. Okay, so you are given with a point here. There are two types of particulate matter accumulated in air, solid particulate matter and liquid particulate matter. So when you take our environment, you know that our environment can be divided into three main categories as hydrosphere, lithosphere and atmosphere. So within our atmosphere or in our air, we can observe two different kinds of particles. So these two kinds of particles are solid particles and liquid particles or liquid droplets. Okay. So because of some, or not from all, because of some, okay, because of some particles, some solid particles and liquid particles, right, the environment pollution can happen, okay, or will happen, right. So we're going to identify what are those particles that contributing in the environment pollution. So first of all, we'll be studying about solid particulate matter or solid particles. So here you are given the types of solid particles that promotes the environment pollution. Okay. So first one given carbon particles. Second one heavy metal particles. Third one ash. Number 4 dust. And fifth one asbestos. Then liquid particles, water vapor, liquid organic particles, mercury vapor. Okay, so here my dear children, some particles promote the pollution of the environment. Pollution means here several adverse effects to the organisms will be given by these particles if they accumulate more in the environment. Okay, so let's go head on to see one by each over here. Carbon particles. So when you take carbon particles, most of the times carbon particles are released to the environment because of the unburned fuel. Unburned means here actually incompletely burned. When particles or when a fuel is incompletely burned, you know that fuel contains carbon, right? Mainly a fuel is going to contain carbon. Or within the previous chapter, we discussed that most of the fuel contains carbon, okay, carbon and hydrogen. So here with less amount of oxygen or else during an incomplete combustion, unburned carbon can be remain within the environment. Unburned carbon particles can be remained within the environment. So these carbon particles, right, will do the environment pollution for sure. Okay. So sometimes my dear children, during the usage of fossil fuel, most of the times we can observe unburned carbon particles. And also when applying lubricants like grease and other kinds of oils, we can observe unburned carbon particles over there. Okay. So unburned carbon particles are added like that. Then my dear children, you are given with heavy metal particles. We discussed about the heavy metal particles previously, right? So there are several ways which the heavy metal particles can add to the environment, like from electronic waste, from agrochemicals and so on. Okay, we discussed earlier about these heavy metal particles, right? Then my dear children, given ash, dust and asbestos, ash and dust, right? Ash is also getting added when burning of several substances, okay, especially like especially like biomass, like paper, leaves, then dried branches and firewood and so on. Okay, then my dear children, dust particles. So you know that our environment contains sand and other silicon based compounds. So these silicon based compounds, there can be smaller silicon based compounds like in particle nature. So these particles are the ones which are referred to as dust. Okay, especially these are like sand particles, very smaller sand particles. Okay, then the next one, asbestos. So asbestos particles, I think you have heard about the roofing sheets, right? So most of the times to prepare roofing sheets, we use asbestos particles, right? So these asbestos particles can be added to the environment when these roofing sheets are being made, right? Then given water vapor, you know that water vapor is a gas that helps for the greenhouse effect. So water vapor is a greenhouse gas. So higher the concentration of water vapor added to the environment, right, the greenhouse effect can be increased. Okay, so you know that there can be several ways which the water vapor can be added to the environment, right? I think you already know about these things, right? Then my dear children, given liquid organic particles. So most of the times these organic means they contain carbon. So liquid organic particles can be added in several ways, right? Like especially from burning of fuel, right? Or else, like when you take spoiled food, sometimes these liquid organic particles can be added to the environment, but mainly from lubrication oils and from fossil fuel. Next one, mercury vapor. Mercury vapor. So mercury vapor is being added to the environment, right, by mercury. So when mercury is being used for several purposes, mercury vapor can add to the environment. So these are the main particles that we can observe, right, which promotes the environment pollution. Okay, my dear children. So there are solid particles and liquid particles like carbon, heavy metal, ash, dust and asbestos. The liquid particles, water vapor, liquid organic particles and mercury vapor. So here you are given with a figure about particulate matter of asbestos, right? So these particles may enter to, there's a special thing about asbestos. I think you have heard about the asbestosis, right? So over there, what happens is asbestos particles enter to our lungs or our respiratory system, and these things are getting filled over there, and because of that, wheezing, then cough, sometimes cancers may also create within our lungs and our respiratory system. So these particles are, right, these particles are going to give out several adverse effects to the organisms. Okay, right then. So these are the particles that helps for the environment pollution, right? Then my dear children, a special topic given. This is a very important gas. Okay, we have to learn about sulfur dioxide gas as it is very important. It is a main gas that promotes the environment pollution. Okay, it behaves as a gas that can create acid rains, and also there are other some adverse effects as well. Okay, so you are given with a certain point here, sulfur dioxide. Let's see about sulfur dioxide then. So first of all, I'll mention the chemical formula for sulfur dioxide. Sulfur dioxide is SO2. Okay, SO2. This is sulfur dioxide. When sulfur is burned in air, right, it burns by giving out a blue color flame. And the product which is getting created over there is sulfur dioxide gas. Okay, SO2. Now let's see what are the points that can be identified within the sulfur dioxide. a colorless gas with a pungent smell, right? So it is a colorless gas with a pungent smell. When it releases to the environment, it causes a big impact on atmosphere. So when it is going to release to the environment, it creates several adverse effects. So here, once again, let's see, it is a colorless gas. That means there is no color. There is no special color. It is colorless. Okay, we can't identify a color over there. However, it has an irritating smell. That is what do you mean by pungent smell. Okay, so it is a colorless gas with a pungent smell. Okay, or else an irritating smell. When it releases to the environment, it causes a big impact on the atmosphere. So it is going to cause a big impact on the atmosphere when it is being released to the environment. Okay, so you are given with methods of releasing sulfur dioxide to the environment. Okay, so there can be several methods. Especially you know that sulfur is being added to the tires. So sulfur is being added to the tires or rubber in order to make vulcanized rubber. So we use vulcanized rubber to make tires. So upon burning tires, there is a possibility that sulfur may remove. Then during the burning of several polymers, artificial polymers like plastics and polythene and so on, sulfur dioxide can emit to the environment. So like that way, there are several methods of exiting sulfur dioxide to the environment. So we are going to observe right now what are the methods, what are the special kinds of methods which the sulfur dioxide gas can be entered to the environment. So let's see. So first thing is given when using coal as a fuel. So my dear children, coal is made by mainly because of the biomass. So when biomass are not going to biodegrade, right, what will happen? They will deposit underneath the mantle of the earth, and they will convert into fossil fuel. Then finally fossil fuel will get solidified to create coal. So within coal, the actual product or the actual content is organic particles. Organic particles means, my dear children, plant and animal materials. So you know that our bodies contain plant and animal bodies contain sulfur as a constituent element. So that means, my dear children, within coal also we can observe, or not within coal, but also within fossil fuel we can observe the sulfur. So when burning fossil fuel like coal, sulfur dioxide can emit to the environment. Okay, next one, during combustion of petroleum. So petroleum means, my dear children, like I said, that also belong to the fossil fuel category, right? So upon burning of petroleum fuel like petrol, diesel and LP gas and so on, some amount of sulfur dioxide gas is getting released to the environment. Like I said in the previous case, can you remember over there? I told you that plant and animal materials are the main reason for the creation of petroleum fuel or else fossil fuel. So this fossil fuel contains sulfur in a smaller amounts. So upon burning this fossil fuel, right, sulfur dioxide may emit as a product. Then, my dear children, third one, during combustion of vulcanized rubber products. So like I said, when I was starting this part, rubber contains sulfur. Actually, vulcanized rubber contains sulfur. Here, vulcanized rubber is made by artificial methods. Can you remember over there we make the crosslinks between the isoprene molecules in order to make it somewhat stronger or harder. So we reduce the properties like elasticity and we increase the properties like hardness over there to create vulcanized rubber. So vulcanized rubber are mainly used in preparation of tires and slippers and shoes and so on. Okay, so it has a good hardness, my dear children. So this rubber can be consumed, or this rubber can be used for a long time, right? However, because of adding sulfur upon burning these substances like tires, sulfur dioxide can emit to the environment. Okay. Then next one, during bacterial activity on organic matter. During bacterial activity on organic matter. So over there, when we are discussing about nitrogen cycle, right, we discussed that several bacteria helps, different bacteria, different kinds of microorganisms helps for the nitrogen cycle. They can create atmospheric nitrogen into ammonium compounds, then ammonium compounds into nitrates and nitrites, and once again these ammonium compounds into again nitrogen gas. Okay, so several kinds of bacteria is going to help in creation of these substances, nitrogen to ammonium, ammonium to nitrate, nitrates to once again ammonium, then ammonium to again nitrogen gas, and so on. So in the same way, my dear children, bacteria or some certain kinds of microorganisms has the ability to convert sulfur, right, sulfur into sulfur dioxide gas. So during the microbial activities on dead bodies, right, during the microbial activity on dead bodies, there is a possibility to release sulfur dioxide gas. Okay. Next one, my dear children, final one, during the eruption of volcanoes. So volcanoes are mainly made up, mainly can be observed within the areas that contains geothermal energy. So here, my dear children, the other specialty is that because of the certain substances contained within these lava, okay, walls of the volcanoes contains large amount of sulfur. Okay, large amount of sulfur can be observed within the volcano walls. So upon volcanic eruptions, this sulfur will get burned down, right, and it will be emitted to the environment. Okay, so sulfur dioxide can emit according to these ways to the environment, my dear children. Okay, so I hope that you got the idea how does the sulfur dioxide is going to emit. Okay, so now we know that sulfur dioxide can be emitted to the environment by several ways. Okay, now let's see, right, the next one, the next type of gas. Okay, the oxides of nitrogen, the oxides of nitrogen. So here you are given oxides of nitrogen, nitrogen oxide, nitrogen dioxide. So oxides means when oxygen is going to bond with nitrogen, different kinds of, right, when oxide is going to when oxygen is going to bond with nitrogen, different kinds of nitrogen oxides could be created. So these things are the ones which are referred to as oxides of nitrogen. For example, you are given with NO, nitrous oxide, and NO2, nitrogen dioxide. Okay, so oxide of nitrogen cause a big impact on the environment once they are released to the atmosphere. So oxides of nitrogen also cause big impact to the environment, right, when they are being released to the environment. So my dear children, this nitrogen oxide is also going to promote the process of environment pollution. Like when you take nitrogen oxides of nitrogen, these oxides of nitrogen can also have the ability to create acid rains. Now in the previous one, when we are discussing about sulfur dioxide gas can dissolve within water. So when sulfur dioxide gas is getting dissolved within water, sulfurous acid H2SO3, right, is getting created. Then it can further react with water vapor and oxygen gas in the environment to create sulfuric acid H2SO4. You know that sulfuric acid is a strong acid. Okay, so in the same way, my dear children, these oxides of nitrogen, okay, oxides of nitrogen can also have the ability to create nitric acid, right, because these substances or these oxides of nitrogen has the ability to dissolve within water. So when during the dissolution of these oxides of nitrogen within water, what will happen is here the oxides of nitrogen is getting converted into nitric acid. So this nitric acid, when these substances are going to fall down or when this acid is going to fall down, several adverse effects are going to create to the environment. Okay, so oxides of nitrogen, oxides of sulfur like sulfur dioxide, are main causative agents of the acid rains. Okay, so here given methods of releasing oxides of nitrogen to the environment. So the different methods that the oxides of nitrogen can enter to the environment. First one given during lightning. The reaction between nitrogen gas and oxygen form oxides of nitrogen. So you know that nitrogen, when you take the nitrogen molecule, my dear children, if you draw the structure for nitrogen molecule, right? Nitrogen molecule is like this. Nitrogen, let me draw the Lewis structure. So this is the lone pair. You know that nitrogen is 2,5 as it is in the 7th place, right? So this is the electronic configuration 2,5. That means, my dear children, it can create 3 bonds by sharing 3 electrons in the last energy level, right? So what nitrogen is going to do is, when making nitrogen gas, it is going to bond with 2 nitrogen atoms. It is going to bond with 2 nitrogen atoms like this, creating triple bond of nitrogen, right, like this. So this is how the nitrogen gas, the N2 gas, structure of N2 gas is observed. There is a triple bond. So therefore, my dear children, nitrogen is a very inactive gas. What is the reason for it? Because nitrogen gas has a triple bond. Triple bond means there are 3 bonds. So it's very difficult to break out these bonds and to create new substances during a chemical reaction for nitrogen. So nitrogen needs large amount of energy in order to break their triple bonds and to create new substances by reacting with other substances. However, my dear children, right? However, right? There is a possibility that, okay, however, there is a possibility that during the rain, you know that nitrogen gas, so that is why the main reason, okay, let me come to that, but that is why the main reason that our atmosphere has more nitrogen, because nitrogen is inactive. So there is a possibility, there's a chance that nitrogen can, as nitrogen is very much inactive, so nitrogen will not react with substances quite often. So large amount of nitrogen can be observed within the environment. You know that more than 70% of our environment contain, or our atmosphere contains nitrogen, right? So because of having that inactivity, nitrogen don't have the ability to react with substances. However, during raining, my dear children, you know that this there are nimbus clouds. So nimbus clouds is going to emit lightning strikes, static electrical charges. So those things contain heavy amount of electricity, right? Large amount of energy. So nitrogen has the ability to absorb that energy during lightning and break into nitrogen several other substances, right? Especially, they're going to break down the triple bond over here by absorbing the energy given out from the lightning process. And upon breaking down these triple bonds, nitrogen that means atomic nitrogen has the ability to react with oxygen in our atmosphere. So this is a natural process, my dear children. Naturally, there is an ability to create acid rains when there is heavy amount of lightning. Okay, so then nitrogen breaks down into atomic nitrogen and it is going to react with what? React with oxygen to create oxides of nitrogen. So upon lightning, my dear children, oxides of nitrogen will emit for sure, right, by reacting nitrogen with oxygen gas. Okay, however, in order to do that, large amount of energy is needed. Okay, remember why? Because nitrogen is having a triple bond within the structure. So nitrogen here, the triple bond is much stronger, so it need more energy, right, large amount of energy in order to break down and to create oxides of nitrogen or any other substance, right? Okay, then the next one given. During combustion inside the engines of vehicle, nitrogen and oxygen react together to form oxides of nitrogen. So during the combustion inside the engines of nitrogen and oxygen. So during the you know that in our engines, right? In our engines, there's a fuel, and it is going to react with oxygen and going to combust to create heat energy. Other than that, my dear children, there's nitrogen as well. There's nitrogen as well. So this nitrogen is also going to react with oxygen to create oxides of nitrogen within the engines of machines, right? Especially in vehicles. Okay. So these are the ways which the nitrogen gas can emit to the environment. Okay. Not oxides of nitrogen, not nitrogen gas, but oxides of nitrogen, right? So these are the ways which oxides of nitrogen can release to the environment. So remember, oxides of nitrogen that has the ability, right? They have the ability to create acid rains. Right then, so this is the second type of gas, oxides of nitrogen. Here it is given as NOx, right? Because there can be several types of gases, oxides of nitrogen, like nitrous oxide and nitrogen dioxide, and so on. Okay. Then the next one, acid rain. Okay. So now we are going to discuss about the acid rain. So over there I told you that acid rains are mainly going to create because of the oxides of nitrogen and oxides of sulfur, like sulfur dioxide. Now let's see, right, the brief discussion or the brief description for the acid rain then. So you are given with a point first. Naturally, rain is little bit acidic due to dissolution of carbon dioxide and nitrogen dioxide, NO2. The pH is about 5.6 of natural rain water. So rain water is somewhat acidic, my dear children. It is somewhat acidic, like acidulated water. So can you remember within the lesson electrolysis, we discussed that acidulated water has the ability to conduct electricity. So now you know actually what is the reason, right? Now during lightning, you know that electricity is going to flow towards you guys through the ground. It's mainly because of that acidulated water present within the ground, my dear children. Because water which is coming out from the rain is acidic. So because of that, acidified water has been created over here. So this acidified water has the ability to conduct electricity. So it's very important to stay with your home when there is a situation of lightning. And it is very important, much important, okay, to be safe, right? Especially to be in a place where, right, not in an outdoor, but in an indoor place when there is lightning. And my dear children, remember, our rainwater is acidic. Okay, somewhat acidic, not heavily acidic, but somewhat acidic. So here the pH value is also given around as 5.6. So it's less than 7, right? So sometimes this pH decreases, that is acidity of the rain increases. The reason for the increase of acidity in rain is due to increase of sulfur dioxide, sulfur trioxide, and nitrogen dioxide in the atmosphere. So sulfur dioxide, you know the formula. So let me write down the formula for sulfur trioxide. When there is plenty of oxygen to react with sulfur, sulfur is going to create sulfur trioxide, SO3. Okay, SO3, sulfur trioxide. Sulfur dioxide, SO2. I think you already know about the nitrogen dioxide, right? NO2. Here also it is given. Then here sulfur dioxide, SO2. SO2. So sometimes the pH value of acid, right, pH value of rain, right, pH value of rain is going to further decrease because of different gases, because of different acidified gases, acidic gases. So in the periodic table, you know that there is a clear pattern when you take the third period. Okay, when you take the oxides of third period starting from nitrogen and up to chlorine, there is a clear pattern of change in the acidic and the basic nature. So metallic substances or metallic ones are usually basic. That means sodium oxide, magnesium oxide are basic substances. Aluminium oxide, Al2O3, it is amphoteric. That means it shows both acidic and basic features. After aluminium oxide, okay, silicon dioxide, very weakly acidic, carbon dioxide, weakly acidic, right? Then after that, okay, after that, when moving to right hand side, the acidity is going to increase, right? Acidity is going to increase. Then P2O3, P2O5 somewhat acidic. Carbon dioxide is also acidic, my dear children, right? Even we discussed that when you take within the grade 10. Can you remember when we are discussing about the changes in matter lesson? Over there we discuss about the carbon dioxide gas. And we discussed that when carbon dioxide is dissolved within water, soda water is getting created. So soda water is a substance that has acidic properties. Okay. So to make fizzy drinks also, we use this carbon dioxide gas. Okay. Right then. So we'll come into the point once more. So P2O5 and P2O3, right? So those substances, the oxides of phosphorus, is also acidic, somewhat strong acidic. Then sulfur, even more strong acidic. Then chlorine, even more strong acidic. So the acidic nature is going to increase from left to right when moving along in a period. Okay. So my dear children, these oxides, sulfur and nitrogen. So sulfur and nitrogen are respectively in 6th group and 5th group. Sulfur is in 6th group and nitrogen is in 5th group. So these things are showing clear non-metal properties. So as they are non-metallic, the oxides created by these things are very acidic. So when these acidic oxides are going to dissolve within rainwater, what will happen? The pH value of rainwater is going to decrease. That means the acidic nature of rainwater is going to increase. The acidic nature of rainwater is going to increase. So that is how the acid rains are getting created. Okay. So the main reason for the creation of acid rain is increasing the concentration of oxides of sulfur and oxides of nitrogen in our atmosphere. Right then. So pH is going to decrease. This acidity, therefore the acidity of rain is going to increase. So reason for the increasement of acidity is the increase of concentration in sulfur dioxide, sulfur trioxide and nitrogen oxides gas, which are the oxides of sulfur and nitrogen. So sulfur dioxide is water soluble. So can you remember when I was talking about sulfur dioxide, I told you that sulfur dioxide is water soluble. That means it can dissolve in water. So sulfur dioxide is water soluble and then it makes sulfurous acid, H2SO3, sulfurous acid. So sulfur dioxide gas, right? Sulfur dioxide gas can be dissolved within water, or it has the ability to dissolve within water. So when sulfur dioxide gas is dissolving in water, it is going to create sulfurous acid H2SO3 by the combination of water and sulfur dioxide gas. This sulfurous acid further oxidizes to make sulfuric acid. So it is going to further oxidize or further combine with oxygen to create sulfuric acid. So sulfuric acid, you know that it is a very strong acid, right? Next one, sulfuric acid is formed due to dissolution of sulfur trioxide 2. Nitrogen dioxide helps in increasing acidic nature of rain. It forms nitric acid with water. Water mixing with above acids due to form rain is known as acid rain. So like I said, my dear children, right? Nitrogen, oxides of nitrogen also has the same ability to create nitric acid upon dissolution of oxides of nitrogen within rainwater. Okay, upon dissolution of sulfur dioxide and sulfur trioxide, sulfur dioxide and sulfur trioxide is going to create sulfuric acid. Upon dissolution of oxides of nitrogen within rainwater, oxides of nitrogen is going to create nitric acid. So the pH value of the rain is going to decrease and the acidity of the rain is going to increase. So this acidified rainwater dropping down from the atmosphere is referred to as acid rains. Okay, this is the one which is referred to as acid rains. Right then. So now we know how does the acid rains are going to create in our atmosphere. So you are given with a point here or a topic. Here, my dear children, we are going to discuss ill effects of acid rains. Bad effects of acid rain. Now let's see what are the bad effects of acid rains then. Destruction of forest and crops. You know that when increasing the acidity of rainwater and when they are going to fall towards a cropland or else a forest, definitely for sure the plants within the crops, okay, are going to die for sure because of increase in the acidity. And other than that, forest cover is totally getting destroyed because of the acidity in the water, right? So it is a very bad effect given out by the acid rains. Then next one given, my dear children, destruction of aquatic organisms due to increase of acidity in water. So once again, when this water falls onto the reservoirs and water sources like rivers, then different waterfalls, then my dear children, tanks, ponds and so on, the organisms, aquatic organisms living within these reservoirs definitely going to die because of increase in acidity. Okay, then affect the absorption of minerals by plants. So when this water is being added to the environment, especially to the soil, acidic water, okay, acidic water has the ability to dissolve these substances, especially minerals within the soil. Okay, so these minerals are going to create different other kinds of substances by reacting with acids. So therefore plants will not have the ability to absorb these minerals from our soil. So the absorption of minerals from the soil is also going to reduce, right? So therefore acid rain is also harmful for the nutritional patterns of the plants as well. Then the next one, dissolving of limestones and other rocks. So dissolving limestones and other rocks. So limestone is made by mainly from calcium carbonate. You know that when a carbonate is being added with an acid, carbonates are going to dissolve within the acid to create carbon dioxide gas. That is even how we prepared carbon dioxide gas in our laboratory. We use hydrochloric acid and we added calcium carbonate into hydrochloric acid. Okay, so over there we found out that the carbon dioxide is going to emit. Okay, then my dear children, okay, so the next one, so like I said, because of dissolving limestones, right, carbon dioxide gas emit to the environment. Carbon dioxide gas can emit to the environment. Okay, and also because of dissolution of these rocks, it will definitely going to affect for the rock cycle. Then not only limestone, my dear children, other kinds of rocks also has the ability to get dissolved within the acid rain. So it is creating several adverse effects to the environment. Then the next one, destruction of metallic buildings, statues and other ruins. So this is also a disadvantage for us, right? Why is that? Because you know that there are several constructions mainly built out from iron, right, or different other kinds of metals like steel. So upon falling down these acids, you know that acids has the ability to increase the corrosion of metals. So these metallic items or metallic constructions definitely going to corrode because of the acid rains. Okay, because of the acid rains, these metallic substances or metallic statues and other kinds of buildings definitely going to corrode. So because of corrosion of these acidic because of corrosion of these buildings, what will happen? It will create several adverse effects. There is a possibility that because of the corrosion, these buildings and statues and ruins may fall down to the ground. Okay, sometimes they will break down. Okay, right then. Some poisonous heavy metals become soluble and the concentration of them increases in reservoirs. So some poisonous heavy metals become soluble and concentration of them increases in reservoirs. So metals have the ability to dissolve within acids. You already know that thing. So some heavy metal particles also have the ability to dissolve within acids, my dear children. So over there, what will happen then? So because of the dissolution of these heavy metal particles within the acid rains, they will get accumulated within water sources for sure. So the concentration of heavy metal particles contained within reservoirs will definitely going to increase. So those heavy metal particles then biomagnify. We'll be discussing about biomagnification when you go further with the lesson part, my dear children. Biomagnification means accumulation of these toxic substances from one particular organism to another. In simple, that is what do you mean by biomagnification. So the biomagnification process will increase, my dear children, and that means heavy metal particles will flow from one particular organism to another particular person or else organism from one food chain. Okay, then through food webs, my dear children, they will travel here and there. And the biomagnification, that means you know that if you take one fish, so one fish contains large amount of heavy metals. However, when we consume fish, we are not going to finish up with one fish, no. So like when you take our lifetime, we are going to take several amount of or several fishes into our dishes. So in that case, the concentration of heavy metals contained within us is also going to increase day by day if you are consuming more amount of fish in those reservoirs. Okay, so heavy metal particles are going to indirectly affect for us as well, right? So these heavy metal particles are getting accumulated within the reservoirs because of dissolution in acid rains. Okay, so the next one, you are given with a certain figure. Within the next one, my dear children, you are given with a certain figure. So this shows the effect of acid rain. So as you can see, the forest cover is being totally destroyed. The leaves are being fallen down to the ground because of the acidic nature of the rain, right? So acid rain has the ability to destroy whole vegetation, right then. So this is the ill effect of acid rain, right? So you are given with an activity. Detect the acidity of normal rain and rain after drought period using indicators. So detect the acidity of normal rain and the rain after drought period using indicators. So in here, especially you can use pH papers if you want actually. Okay, or else even you can go for the litmus papers as well. But however, to get more certain idea, okay, we can use, especially to get more certain idea, we can use pH papers. So if you have pH papers, my dear children, try to get this and try to find out the acidic nature or the basic nature of normal rainwater, right, and rain after a drought period. I think your parents have been told to you guys that don't go outside after a long, right, after a long drought period, and if the rain is going to come down, don't go outside. Don't get wet from that rain. Why is that? It's mainly because, my dear children, after a certain drought period, now let's take that for about 2 months, there is no rain within our environment now. So for about 2 months, these gases means nitrogen, oxides of nitrogen and oxides of sulfur is getting accumulated to our atmosphere for about 2 months. Okay, if the drought is going to hold for about 2 months, then for about 2 months, my dear children, these gases are going to accumulate in our environment or within our atmosphere. Then what will happen? What will happen here is, because of accumulation of these gases within the environment for about too long time, the concentration of these gases within the atmosphere is going to increase for sure. Then when rain is going to come down after that super long time, heavy amount of or very large amount of these oxides of nitrogen and oxides of sulfur is going to dissolve within the rainwater and come down. So what will happen over there? Definitely the acidity is going to increase in that rain. So there is a scientific, right, there is a scientific reason for the saying of that, right, for that saying, which you should not go outdoors or you should not get wet from a rain which is coming after a long time. There is a scientific reason for that as well. So that scientific reason is, my dear children, when increasing, right, the acidity in rainwater, right, because of dissolution of oxides of nitrogen and oxides of sulfur, you might come across with, or you might you may have, okay, or you might come across with different kinds of diseases, right, especially skin diseases. So that is why it is very important to stay indoors when there is going to rain after a certain drought period, my dear children. So I think your parents have been told to you, have been told these things for you guys, right? So that is why it is very important to stay indoors and not to get wet during a rain which is coming for a longer time period. Other than that, my dear children, other than this acid effect thing, right, large amount of bacteria and different other kinds of microorganisms like viruses and different kinds of things are getting accumulated within the environment, right, because of the drought seasons, because there is no possible way to dissolve and travel, no. So in that case also, the amount of pathogenic substances contained within the atmosphere is also going to increase during a drought season. So it also has the ability to come down by dissolving with water, and they might get active as well when upon touching with water. Okay, so my dear children, definitely it will create several ill effects, several kinds of symptoms for you guys if you're going to get wet within a rain that is going to come after a long time period. Okay, remember this thing. So here, if you measure it accurately, definitely for sure, we can observe that rain which is coming after a drought season has a very acidic nature, or the acidic nature is very high. However, in normal rainwater, the acidic level is low, my dear children. Okay, the acidic level is low. So these are the observations that you can take from the activity given here. So especially these activities are given for you guys to try at your home and to find out a certain thing and to come into a conclusion by doing the special kinds of activity. By that way you can replenish your knowledge, my dear children. Okay, so it's very important to carry out these activities, right? Okay, then so I have given you the explanation what is going to happen over there, right? So remember, after a drought time period, the rain which is coming down is very acidic. The acidic nature is very high than the normal rainwater. Okay, right. Now let's head on to see the next one. So now we are going to discuss about another type of pollutant. So here the next type of pollutant given, the domestic waste. Domestic waste. So let's see about the domestic waste then. Mainly food scraps, spoiled food, plastic and polythene waste, discarded clothes, glass and porcelain items, garden waste and human excretory matter belong to domestic waste. So my dear children, domestic waste. Domestic waste means in our houses, when you take our houses, the houses also going to release different kinds of waste materials, right? The materials which cannot be used further, and we're going to dispose these things into our environment. So these materials are some of these materials are toxic to the environment. Some materials are somewhat, like somewhat favorable. Even though they are favorable, there are several ill effects as well. Okay, so these materials which we discard within our houses after the usage of substances, right, we are going to discard those things. So especially these materials are being used in our domestic activities or especially in our houses. So after discarding these materials to the environment after usage, okay, after usage of in our houses, what will happen, right? These substances have the ability to create different ill effects. Okay, so we are going to discuss about these domestic waste right now. You know that we often use plastic, polythene and other kinds of polymers, artificial polymers in our domestic use. Okay, or in our houses we use these things. So what will happen if you discard these things into the environment improperly? Definitely these substances get accumulated within the environment because we won't be able to observe biodegradation that is going to happen within the artificial polymer. Now you know that most of the artificial polymers are not getting biodegraded. Okay, most of the artificial polymers are not biodegradable. So that means, my dear children, these things will get accumulated within the environment and some kinds of animals will get or will consume these things. You know that when we are removing lunch sheets, especially lunch sheets, when we remove these lunch sheets with food waste to the environment, animals like cows, oxes, dogs, cats, then goats, these organisms will consume these things. Okay, and the polythene and other wraps are getting accumulated within their digestive systems. So they will die for sure because of this accumulation, because you know that polythene and other kinds of substances are not getting digested within their digestive system. So the digestive system will get blocked and the organisms will get die. Okay, so this polythene and other kinds of polymers, as these things are not biodegradable, right, it's important to not to release these things to the environment improperly. So burning of these substances is also not good, because these burning of these substances, right, what will happen? These substances will create different kinds of toxic gases and they will be released to the environment. So that is even more dangerous. So domestic waste is also, my dear children, create several kinds of adverse effects to the environment, right? Now let's see what other things given here then. So these are the types of domestic waste, my dear children. It can be food scraps, spoiled food, plastic, polythene waste, discarded clothes, glass, porcelain items, garden waste, and so on. There are different kinds. So when these things are getting added to the environment, right, continuously, what will happen, right? Different kinds of ill effects are going to create. So these things are continuously added to the environment, right? Continuously added to the environment. So because of addition of these substances continuously to the environment, as within the given figure, you can see that the waste substances collected within the environment is going to increase, and piles of garbage are going to create within urban cities, right? I think you have already seen those things, right? In Sri Lanka also, we can observe different kinds of waste dump piles in certain towns and areas. So they will emit different kinds of toxic substances to the environment. Not only that, we won't be able to keep our nose over there because of the smell, the pungent smell given out by these piles of garbage. And over there, my dear children, like the water sources is going to pollute for sure. We won't be able to consume groundwater within those places, right? So there are different adverse effects which is going to create because of releasing these waste materials excessively to the environment. Okay, so these are the domestic waste, my dear children. Okay, then given electronic waste, e-waste. So we discussed about several things regarding the electronic waste in our previous chapters, but however not into a larger extent. Now here we are going to discuss the ways which the electronic waste can be added to the environment and the adverse effects also. So electronic waste. The electrical and electronic accessories which are stopped permanently from reselling, recycling and selling are called e-waste. So electronic waste, these substances are created when you remove a certain electronic item. So why do you remove an electronic item? Because if the electronic item is not working properly, then we are going to discard it, right? Sometimes we can repair it and once again use, but however, there is a certain lifetime for a certain kind of an accessory or else to a machine. So when this lifetime is going to decrease day by day, okay, we have to discard it eventually. So you know that there is heavy amount of population who is living around our planet Earth. So when like several years are going to pass by, because of the technological advancement, right, the types of electronic accessories and electronic equipments are also going to upgrade day by day. For a certain example, like my dear children, okay, we can take earlier we used button phones. Small button phones. They have buttons, plastic buttons. So the screens, right, the mobile screen is not that much larger and the technology is very less, right? Like we can make only a call, then we can send a text message. Even the internet connection was not there. Okay, I'm talking about, my dear children, about like 20 years back. Okay, so over there during that time period, the mobile phones that we had, okay, are very poor in technology. But nowadays, my dear children, what has happened? Because of the technological advancement, Now the smartphones era has come. Okay, so those phones are being replaced with smartphones right now. So prior to that, that means not at that age, but in between that age, my dear children, another type of mobile phones came to our world. So these things are somewhat smart, not that much smart right now, but somewhat smarter. They had cameras. The display is having a colored display, right? Then certain musics, right? Certain music can be added to the mobile phone by using memory chips or any other kinds of storage devices. And my dear children, internet connection, over there we refer to that one as GPRS. Okay, now we use the 4G connections now, and 4G plus connections, 5G, like that way there are several generations of signals and other ones now. But I'm just talking about the middle age, like in 2008, 2007, 2006, that period. The button phones was there like in year 2000 to 2005. Okay, so after that came another era where the mobile phones, the camera phones were developed. Then, my dear children, after that, like after 2011, 12, 13, then came the smartphone era. Okay, after 2011 and 12, all the ones in our society, in their hand, they had a smartphone, mainly which are going to work out with Android operating system or else Apple or any other operating system. But however, these are the main two operating systems that we can observe in the mobile phones right now within our normal society just now. Okay, so then what has happened to the previous mobile phones? They were discarded to the environment. Sometimes they have been scrapped into several pieces and been discarded to the environment. Okay, so otherwise we won't be able to consume almost all the parts within those things. No, actually there are some parts which we can use, but however most of the parts are not used. Okay, and these should be discarded to the environment. Otherwise there is no other way around to use these things. Okay, so most of the mobile phones which we had earlier are being now discarded, and these discarded mobile phones are being added to the environment. So this is not going to happen with the mobile phones, but with computers, televisions, radios, setups, DVD players, right? Like that way, there are vast kinds of electronic items which have been discarded to the environment because of the technological advancement. So you know that electronic items contain different kinds of electronic substances, right, or electronic instruments like diodes, resistors, then capacitors, and so on. So these instruments are made by different kinds of substances like arsenic, lead, mercury, and so on. All of these things are heavy metals, my dear children. So when these things are added to the environment in huge extent, definitely for sure you know that the environment pollution is going to promote up. Okay, so this is the adverse effect of electronic waste. Mainly these things are going to accumulate, or mainly these things are going to increase the level of heavy metals within the soil or within our mantle of the earth, within our crust of the earth. Okay, right then. So the electrical and electronic accessories which are stopped permanently from reselling, recycling and selling are called to as e-waste, like I explained in brief. So as harmful effects of modern technology, electronic waste is added to the environment at a higher rate. So all of these things, as you can see, all of these things, these electronic waste are materials which we used during our earlier times, my dear children. So these older computers and video game consoles, Then, my dear children, different kinds of televisions and other screens can be observed within the picture, like I said. So, because of the advancement in the technology, right, these things are being now replaced with other kinds of way advanced, right, instruments, right then. So, materials released as e-waste. Now, we are going to discuss about the materials which are being released to the environment as e-waste. So, let's see. Lead. So, lead is being released to the environment by batteries, circuit boards, cathode ray tubes of computers and televisions. So, lead, you know that in batteries like lead acid accumulators, we use lead. So, lead is a heavy metal. So, my dear children, lead can be added to the environment by these batteries. Then, my dear children, in circuit boards. Now, you know that in order to, in order to weld, right, in order to weld and fix a certain instrument, electronic instrument to a circuit board, we are going to use lead. By using an electrical bath, we are going to dissolve or melt lead, and we are going to fix that certain electronic equipment to the circuit board. So, we have to weld it, okay. Especially we use the bath, the electronic bath, and we are going to melt up a certain piece of lead and we are going to fix it. So, when these circuit boards are being released to the environment, the lead which is deposited within these electronic equipments is going to add to our environment, okay. Then the next one, cathode ray tubes of computers and televisions. So, can you remember earlier television screens, like they had a very huge back, okay, and the mass is also very high. So, those screens are referred to as cathode ray tubes, okay, cathode ray, CRT televisions and CRT monitors. So, these CRT monitors and screens, they contain lead. So, when these screens are released to the environment, lead is being added to the environment. Then next one, mercury. So, thermometers and fluorescent lamps are going to release mercury to the environment. So, thermometers and fluorescent lamps. Then cadmium. Cadmium is being released to the environment by especially from batteries and cellular phones. So, cellular phones, within the cellular phone batteries also, they contain cadmium, and also to create different kinds of electronic substances, cadmium is being used. Next one, beryllium. Computers, telephone, automatic electronic apparatus. So, beryllium can be added to the environment by computers, telephone, automatic electronic apparatus. Then, my dear children, arsenic. Light emitting diodes, LED, right. So, by LED panels and different kinds of LEDs which have been used by the electronic equipments, right, arsenic can be added to the environment because LED is mainly created by using arsenic. Next one, polyvinyl chloride, PVC, by computer casings, wires and other kinds of, okay. So, wire casings, then computer casings, these things use PVC as it is electrical insulator, right. You know that PVC is an electrical insulator. So, therefore, when these substances being released to the environment, PVC can be added to the environment. So, as it is a polymer, it will take heavy time to biodegrade, okay. Actually, those things are not biodegradable, right. So, these are the ways which e-waste can be added to the environment, okay. Right then, so let's head on to see the next one. So, here you are given with another special kind of waste material, my dear children, right. A really toxic waste material that is going to emit radiation, and because of the radiation, DNA structures of the organisms can mutate and different kinds of defects will occur within the organisms, okay. So, here we are going to discuss about the nuclear waste. Okay, nuclear waste then. Radioactive and high toxic materials discarded by nuclear preparation centers and nuclear weapons are known as nuclear waste. So, radioactive and high toxic materials. So, radioactivity means it is going to emit several kinds of rays like ultraviolet rays, X-rays. Okay, then my dear children, sometimes gamma rays as well. So, you know that gamma rays are very dangerous. Gamma rays has the ability to disintegrate molecules, right? Disintegrate molecules into their atoms. Okay, gamma rays, they have that much power stored within those things. The energy carried out by the gamma rays are very high. So, gamma rays has the ability to disintegrate these things into their atoms. So, when a gamma ray is going to hit on a certain DNA structure or else in a cell or any other, what will happen? These things will degrade into particles like their atoms, like into their atoms. So, you know that if atoms are getting, if they disintegrate into atoms, the whole structure is going to break down, right? Not within inside, not within outside, my dear children, but within inside. So, within inside of an organism, right? Within inside an organism, the DNA structures and the molecules and the structural components, proteins, all of these things are broken down into pieces and shredded into atoms. Then what will happen? The organism, if they face a certain radiation like that, definitely will get dissolved, not from outside but from the inside. Okay, inside, within their structure, inside, whole the structures, all the organs and organ systems are going to dissolve inside, and finally the person will die through the organ failure and other kinds of serve effects. Okay, so this is what the radioactivity can do. So, radioactive elements are very dangerous as they're going to emit different kinds of waves, okay, electromagnetic waves, which are very much harmful if they come in contact with our normal biological molecules, because these biological molecules are getting shredded into atoms as they strike on our bodies. Okay, my dear children. So, here we are going to discuss about that kinds of nuclear waste given out by nuclear preparation centers. So, here it is given. Let's see once again. The radioactive and high toxic materials discarded by nuclear preparation centers and nuclear weapons are known as nuclear waste. So, nuclear waste, my dear children. Uranium and plutonium are the main elements used as nuclear fuels. The radioactivity of them can exist for a longer period of time. Therefore, they are deposited in deep sea or ground after covering by thick concrete or metal casing. So, actually, in order to get survive by the radiation given out by these particular materials, the concrete layers at least should be 6 feet in thickness. At least should be 6 feet in thickness. Okay. So, if that's so, we can, like up to a certain extent, we can get protected from these harmful rays. Especially these things are going to emit gamma rays, my dear children. So, gamma rays and X-rays, okay. So, gamma rays and X-rays are very harmful to us, right? So, now you might think that even we are making X-ray photography to check our internal structures, skeletons. Actually, that is also harmful. That is also going to reduce your lifetime from a certain amount. But however, then why the doctors are telling that now you have to make X-rays? What is the reason for it? Because my dear children, you have to live on today in order to live in the future, right? If you die because of a certain injury, or if your hand or whatever other thing, if that skeleton is not being fixed well, then how come we should know it? There's no any certain other way to know these things, no? So definitely you should go for an x-ray photography. Otherwise you won't be able to, right, identify. Otherwise the doctors will not be able to identify these effects, right? So therefore you have to live today. You have to live right now to think about the future. So that's why if it is very important to take an x-ray, then we have to take it. The doctors won't suggest an x-ray if it is not compulsory, because they know that these things are harmful right there. So uranium and plutonium are the main elements used as nuclear fuels. So these two are the main two fuels. This is uranium, my dear children. So as you can see, it is having a certain kind of a glow, uranium. Then this is plutonium. Plutonium is man-made. That means, my dear children, this is not going to be identified, or this item or this element cannot be identified in our natural environment. This is a man-made element. Okay, artificial element, man-made element. And the other thing is that, my dear children, these two substances are much expensive, very expensive, because these things are very rare to find. Okay, plutonium, you have to prepare it in laboratories. Uranium, even though it is available in our natural environment, uranium salts are available. So we have to extract the uranium metal out of those. However, plutonium is man-made, artificial. So this is plutonium and this is uranium, right? So I'll name these two. So actually it is given, right? So here it is given. The atomic number and the mass number is also given here. Plutonium. So this is uranium. These things have been marked, okay? Right. So uranium and plutonium are the main elements used as nuclear fuels. The radioactivity of them can exist for a long time period. Therefore, they are deposited in deep sea or ground after covering by thick concrete or metal casing. So as covering sheets, we use thick concrete or metal. Okay, otherwise their radioactivity will come out. However, my dear children, now in nuclear preparation centers or else in nuclear power plants, right, mostly we use uranium and plutonium now. So over there, my dear children, uranium and plutonium are actually covered by a certain metallic sphere, right? So here we are discussing about nuclear waste now. So these nuclear fuels, right, nuclear fuels are not the ones which are considered as nuclear waste in here. Then what? My dear children, if you take a certain nuclear power plant, now nuclear energy carries large amount of heat energy. So when what happens is atoms are being degraded into several other kinds of atoms, as they have weaker attractions between their nucleus, between the particles in their nucleus. If you take a certain uranium atom, my dear children, within the uranium atom there is nucleus, no? So within the nucleus there are protons and neutrons. So protons and neutrons in these kinds of elements, they have a weaker bond. You know that neutrons and protons are tightly packed in the nucleus in normal atoms. But however, in these atoms, their nature, that packing nature is somewhat weak. That means by striking through a certain particle, we can break that bond and we can disintegrate the nucleus into two or more parts. So upon disintegrating these particles, my dear children, these particles means the nucleus of a certain atom, large amount of radiation or energy is being released to the environment. So we harvest this energy And by using this energy, right, actually here, large amount of heat energy is going to emit to the environment as radiation. So by harvesting this heat energy, what we can do is we can rotate turbines by, right, we can't, you know that by using heat energy we can't rotate turbines, no, but however we can create a steam by using this heat energy. Then steam has the ability to rotate turbines. So this is how we create, right, this is how we create electricity by using nuclear fuel. So what is the discarded item over there? The discarded item is, my dear children, water. Water. So water should be there within the core of the nuclear power plant. Now core means the area which contains the nuclear fuel. So I told you that nuclear fuel has the ability to disintegrate the atom into several other types of atoms. So over there, large amount of heat energy is given out. So to control that heat energy, water is being used. So water is going to absorb now that radiation gradually. And this water should be circulated throughout the power plant, or else that water should be removed to the environment. Usually in a power plant, my dear children, they circulate the water. Okay, but what will happen if a certain disaster, I mean like if a certain accident is going to happen, then this water definitely is going to release to our environment. And the other special thing, my dear children, these nuclear power plants are much safer. That's the real idea. It's not a terrible one. It's not a terrible one. It's safer. Okay, when you come, for my opinion, in my opinion, okay, if you take a certain power plant, a hydropower plant, or else a coal power plant, compared with a nuclear power plant, nuclear power plant is even more safer than those things, right? That means, my dear children, the more amount of energy can be created within a nuclear power plant. And the other thing is that it is much safer. In our whole human history, there are only two certain, right? There are only two certain disasters has mainly occurred, okay, within our human history because of the nuclear power plants. So one thing is the Chernobyl explosion, which happened in Russia, and the other one is the Fukushima power plant, right? So that was also got a certain that was also created in Japan, my dear children, right? The Fukushima power plant. So these are the two main historical cases created within the history of human beings because of the nuclear power plants. So those two are somewhat historical. I mean, like heavy amount of radiation were released during these disasters. Okay, even the Russian scientists and their ones who are living in the Russia, they admit that the downfall of the Russia even came because of the explosion happened within the Chernobyl power plant. So Chernobyl power plant is the disaster which happened over the Chernobyl power plant has mainly occurred because of a pure human error. So there is no certain way a certain power plant can be exploded otherwise. As like I said, these nuclear power plants are much safer, even safer than hydropower plants that we used in Sri Lanka more often, right? Even more safer than our fuel power plants, nuclear power plants. The thing is that we have to maintain it. There should be certain technicians, there should be certain technicians, and they should follow up the rules and regulations in maintaining these things. If you don't follow those things, definitely disastrous thing would happen. However, if you follow these things to the order, then nothing is going to happen for sure. and the amount of waste and the radiation which is added to the environment is also less. So like I said, the only waste material which is being added to the environment from a nuclear power plant is nuclear radiation added or absorbed water. So I told you that normally in a nuclear power plant they circulate the water. Okay, so these nuclear power plants are, when compared to the fuel power plants, nuclear power plants are even environment friendly also. Okay, but the thing is, disasters can happen. Over there is a risk of leaking these substances to the environment. However, disasters can happen only because of pure human errors, and sometimes because of the natural disasters like tsunami waves. So in Japan, Fukushima power plant, the disaster over there happened mainly because of a tsunami wave that hit on the power plant. Over there at the Russia, because of pure human error. Right? Human error means actually, if you go and find out and investigate about that case, my dear children, actually the Chernobyl power plant was blasted away because of a human error. Okay, that was actually deliberately done, right? So if you go and further investigate about these things, you can find out several details from the internet regarding these cases, my dear children. So you can investigate these things. So even I have investigated, that is why I am telling you these things. Okay, so my dear children, like I said, in a nuclear power plant, even though there is a certain, certain things that will come into our mind when we are talking about nuclear power plants. However, those things, now when you take a nuclear power plant, your mind will definitely tell to you that this is dangerous, right? If nuclear explosions happen, then it is going to be very dangerous. But however, within our human history, only two main incidents had happened like that. So that's why I'm telling that these things are somewhat, right, safer than the other methods, and large amount of energy also can be produced. However, during a disastrous period, substances can emit to the environment, but the probability of releasing those disastrous substances to the environment are very less. The probability is very less. So within our human history, only two main such incidents have occurred. Okay, so this is not a terrible thing, it's a good thing, but however, we have to manage it properly. That's the case over here. Okay, right. So my dear children, like I said, okay, these materials, uranium and plutonium, they can emit certain radiation to the environment. Okay, they can emit certain radiation levels to the environment. However, upon exposing into environment only. Okay, so if disasters will happen within a certain environment which has nuclear energy, then my dear children, the radiation level will definitely going to increase, and it will create certain adverse effects to the environment. Mainly, if you take organisms, the structural level of the organisms totally going to change. Structural level is going to totally change, and DNA and other kinds of structural components contained within the organisms definitely going to destroy inside, and also it will come out as well, right? So however, my dear children, these things are rarely occurring. That means because if these things are not maintained well, then there is a possibility to occur these things, and because of the natural disasters mainly. So these are the ways which the nuclear waste can be added to the environment, my dear children. Okay, so nuclear waste are very harmful to the environment, right? So these uranium and plutonium is a man-made one, uranium is found in normal environment as well. So these two substances are the ones which are considered as nuclear fuel. Okay, so here the radioactivity or the electromagnetic waves which are emitted to the environment are the ones harmful to the organisms and for the components in our environment. So I hope that you got the idea, right? So I hope that you got the idea about these nuclear fuel and about nuclear power plants. Okay, so we'll be discussing about these things when you go further with the lesson, right? When you go even further with the lesson, we'll be discussing about these things, my dear children, somewhat in a greater extent, right? So, however, I'll be discussing those things in our next chapter, not within this chapter, my dear children. Okay, so within this part, right, we discussed about several kinds of substances, several kinds of pollutants, right, that helps for the pollution, environment pollution. So in our next chapter also we'll be continuing the same thing. So we'll be discussing about several other kinds of pollutants that we can observe within the environment, right? So I'm planning to meet you with our next chapter to discuss further things that is going to promote the environment pollution then. So we'll meet with the next chapter to discuss those things.
To watch these important lessons, subscribe to DP Education's YouTube channel right now. Click on the bell icon to stay updated on the latest lessons. Sri Lanka's largest free online school, DP Education.